Welcome to the Stone Carving and Lettering Takeaway podcast. I'm Charlotte Howarth, a letter carver.
And I'm Nina Bilby, a freelance stone carver.
And in this month's podcast, we've got a really nice range of things to talk about. We have got 2 great interviews, haven't we?
We've got a stonemason from Gloucester Cathedral called Paul Synan and a recently graduated apprentice stonemason called Jess Eyre. And I met them at a very interesting afternoon at Mansion House in London a couple of weeks ago.
And we've got a great top tip coming up at the end of the podcast. I was recently in Newgrange in Ireland, and I'm going to tell you all about that and some links that I'm going to make available on the show notes. Anyway, how did you meet Jess and Paul? Tell me about that.
So I had the honour to be awarded my Master Craft certificate from the Worshipful Company of Masons and the City and Guilds of London Institute.
So does that mean you're a master carver now?
I am now officially. It's the only sort of Master Craft certificate scheme for my industry, in our industry, in the country. So I am now on a register as a master carver, master stonemason. So very, very proud of that, actually.
So you should be.
Thank you. It used to be you had to have 25 years under your belt to get it, but I think it's slightly changed now. So you put together a portfolio, you submit to a panel of your peers, and they assess it and they vote whether you should be considered a master. And I was very lucky and very honoured to be accepted into the Hall of Fame.
And we're the Stone Carving Hall of Fame. Tell me, were you invited? How did that happen? Did you put yourself forward? What happened?
Well, I'm a member of the Worshipful Company of Masons, and they put a call out saying applications are now being accepted. I'd always shied away from it because I didn't feel worthy. I know it's strange, but with my ego, I didn't feel worthy enough. And then I had a conversation, I think, with you and a couple of other people about experience and what it actually meant to be a master in anything. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have a go. So there are some extraordinary people on the list of past people who've been given the certificate, some very qualified, and some of the country's top carvers in particular. If you look them up, there's some extraordinary people. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. And so I thought about it carefully. I put the portfolio together and then I sent it off, and I pretty much forgot about it. And then I got a lovely email saying they had the honour to award me the certificate. So that was a lovely
Congratulations.
present. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And during I got my suit on. Mm-hmm. Had a haircut, got my suit on. I managed to do my suit up, which was an achievement in itself. Let's put it that way.
I would always have to remember to wear deodorant for a day out like that.
Well, I had a really long journey. I left my house at 6 and the event started at 12 sharp. So we got there. I took Lucille, my partner Lucille. We had a really lovely afternoon and it felt very, very special. And I saw some amazing people, some incredibly talented people, from gun engravers to master embroiderers, spectacle makers, plumbers, masons, carpenters. It was just such a room full of wonderfully enthusiastic and skilled people. And, the event really did make it incredibly special.
And it was in a livery hall, was it?
It was in Mansion House, which is the seat of the mayor of the City of London. So not the mayor of London, the mayor of City of London. He wears a tricorn hat and looked a bit like Dick Whittington and had a big cloak on. Lots of people walking about in big cloaks. And it was very imposing, stunning building. If you look it up online, pictures. As part of the master certificate, you all had to stand up. He's like, I charge you. And the people who were getting their certificates stood up. And then he read this kind of oath that you had to say. And it was really special. I've had to do that a few times with different things, but this one was particularly special because it basically, with your permission, I'm going to read a little bit of it.
You have my permission.
On my certificate, I'm going to do it anyway. It says, a charge has been accepted to continue acting in the capacity of mentor to those pursuing a career in stonemasonry in order that they may benefit from the recipient's considerable experience and achievements. We all had to say, I do. And it meant a big deal. Yeah, it was like getting married. It was nice. It was like, yeah, I promise to pass on everything I've learned to the next generation so that the craft continues at a high standard. And I felt really honoured to be able to do that. Even though I've been doing it for years and years and years, to actually say that out loud was a very special moment.
I think it's something we both feel driven to do, is to share our knowledge, isn't it?
I think it's an obligation. If you enter into a craft, there's no option. You have to do that. Why would you not do that? And you should do it to the best. And I also think you should do it to honour everybody who's taught you.
I agree.
I've been taught with, I mean, you and I have both been taught and been influenced by some extraordinary human beings. And I think I'm very proud to the fact that I've been taught by them, and to pass that skill that they've given me onto someone else feels like I'm honouring them. We had the pleasure to talk to Paul Synan and Jess Eyre about their journey into the craft and the certificates meant to them.
We've got two. We'll put the interviews back to back.
Yes.
And you can listen to them, and then we'll come on to the top tip.
I hope you enjoy this. We're here today on the Stone Carving and Lettering Takeaway podcast. Welcome, Jess Eyre. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jess, we met at Mansion House for the City and Guilds Livery, or City and Guilds Institute awards ceremony, and you were getting a very special award. Can you tell us what it was, please?
Yes, I was there to receive the Apprentice Mason certificate from the Worshipful Company of Masons with a couple of my fellow apprentices from Building Crafts College.
Were you surprised to get that? Was that a surprise, or was something you've been working towards for a while?
It was a bit of a surprise, actually. I did submit my portfolio, but then sort of forgot all about it and was on the other side of the world in New Zealand when I got the email to say, by the way, you've been invited to this award ceremony because you've been awarded this certificate.
That's brilliant. Isn't that brilliant?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's so funny, all the people we speak to, they're so sort of like, oh yeah, I just got this award. It's amazing to get these things. They probably don't give many of them out. And I think it must be a real thing to be awarded one. It must show that your work's of a great standard. And
yeah, it's a standardization process, isn't it?
Yeah,
brilliant.
It was a real honour to be there, actually.
There were some good people there, weren't there?
Yes, and the venue is spectacular, so it really did make me feel like I'd gone up in the world a little bit.
Did the people have all their chains of office and things on? Is it quite formal?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yes, there were lots of beautiful robes with lots of embroidery and furs, and I don't know, I'm hoping not real fur, but
I think
lots of beautiful jeweled colours.
Amazing stuff. And it was the person who we got the thing off was the Lord Mayor of the City of London with his tricorn hat. So like a Dick Whittington hat covered in fluff. And he tipped it to us in the audience.
It was a sizable hat as well.
It was a sizable tricorn hat, which I was so impressed with. He wore it with great dignity.
He did. He held it well.
There was the master of the Worshipful Company of Clockmakers was the one that I was really impressed with, because he had a patch over his eye and he looks like something out of a Philip Pullman novel, like he should be flying a balloon or something. I don't know.
He just part of his dress up, or was it a necessity?
No, who knows? I didn't ask him that. Jess, you are now a fully fledged stonemason. Tell us how your journey began in the world of the stone.
Well, it was marginally unconventional in that I had absolutely no interest in stone whatsoever. I think everybody comes in and says that it's an unconventional way in, but I wanted to work with wood. I wanted to be a carpenter or a timber framer or a wood carver for quite some time. I dabbled with some metalwork. I did a bit of blacksmithing and welding and things like that, and was just sort of trying to find my craft. And I thought I'd found it in timber. And then I did some courses some work experience with Carpenter Oak. I did a course with Alan Ritchie in South Wales, and a few other names who have escaped me. And then I got a job at Chiltern Open Air Museum, which is in South Buckinghamshire, as their Heritage Lottery funded buildings trainee, and I was the last one of 3, and I was there for 18 months, 2 years, and I met who then came on to be my employer, Colin McGugan from Triglyff Masonry. And part of the HLF traineeship with COAM was to go out and work with other trades. So I did a bit of stained glass window making. I did some wood carving with an amazing wood carver down in Beaconsfield, and I also went off and did some masonry and some lime plastering and mortar repairs with Colin on a couple of occasions. And when my traineeship ended, I didn't really know where I was going or what I was doing, and he said, "Why don't you come and work with me?" And so I did. And he's a stonemason by trade, but because he's quite a small company, he did a lot of other work, a lot of lime plastering and rendering and pointing, brickwork, but predominantly in the heritage sector. And around where he's based, there's also material called witchet, which is like cob, but it's very, very specific to the area in Buckinghamshire. And I worked with him, and we did loads and loads of different things, and we discussed my development. And he said, he's a mason, so what he would be able to teach me was masonry. And as with wood and as with lime as well, working with my hands and making things and carving and moulding has always been something that I've really, really enjoyed, and I've become adept at, and I'm quite good at. So the idea to be qualified in a trade really appealed to me. Pandemic pushed me back a year, and I was supposed to start a little earlier, but I started at BCC in 2021.
And that's the building crafts college, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yes. And found I didn't take to it immediately. I think there were a couple of other apprentices there who had not been with their employers as long as I had, but had more focused time on the stone. And so when they picked up a mallet and chisel in the workshop on our first day, I was a bit blown away by their skill already. But because we worked with so many other things, I didn't focus primarily on stone at work. I had a lot to learn, but it was fascinating and I loved it. I think probably carving is what I'd been looking for a long time, trying to find through all those crafts that I tried and all the makings that I'd tried and the different ways to do it. I think carving is what I'd been looking for, and it was just trying to find the right material for me. So probably not the most straightforward path to stone.
So carving in stone, not wood, even though you had a wood beginnings, you're leaning towards carving in stone.
I am, yeah. I think when I did some work in South Wales with the Towie Centre, which is just outside Swansea in Llandilo, and I did a Women in Heritage Construction course with them for 6 months, and it covered lime plastering, stonemasonry and timber framing. And I'd already gone in with visions of becoming an amazing female timber framer.
I love that vision of yourself. Absolutely brilliant.
I went, and they even allowed me to duck out some of the other subjects, because I would then go off and do courses in timber framing at while they were all learning about dry stone walling or plastering or something, because I was so set that it was going to be timber, and it was the warmth of timber that I really liked, and the smell of it as well. But actually I found there's something about stone I initially found really cold, and I found it quite difficult to get into back then, and I think that was because I was so blinkered and so focused that timber was my material, that I didn't really give it the time of day. But there is so much warmth to stone. There's so many variances, and the smell, stone smells as well when you hit it. It's not just everyone thinks timber, you can smell the lovely cedar wood and things like that, but stone has smells as well when you hit pockets. There's, I don't know, maybe it's the clinking that you get with stone. You don't get that when you're hitting timber. I don't know, there is just something about working stone that I find really satisfying. Not to say that I don't find timber satisfying anymore. I found stone a much more natural process, and I found it easier to work, which was a bit of a revelation for somebody who was so focused that timber was going to be the way that she was going to go. One of the feelings of frustration that I do get from stone is the speed, and because the company that I worked for, because we were so small and we had to do everything when we went for very specific jobs. But the render was all us. We would take it off and we would re-render. And working with lime is a slow process, and again, yes, working with stone is a slow process, but it was all us and it was all what we were doing. Whereas when I've worked with timber, there were so many more of you I found in the timber framing ones that we were doing, that you didn't go from start to finish in the process, because you had your bit, and there were other people.
You were like a cog in the process. Yeah.
But I think that's very specific to my experience because of the size of the masonry company that I ended up in. I know other people who work in big London masonry firms who were apprentices with BCC at the same time as me. They have an incredibly different experience to me, because they are are also that they are a cog in a machine on a massive building in a huge city in a big company. It was just me sometimes on site, or it was just me and the boss sometimes on site, and there was nobody else around. The client was out, and it was just us and the work that we were doing. And that being able to focus, I think that level of focus that I could get from that, and that slowing down, I've found incredibly satisfying and meditative. You know, when you've got a whole room to plaster and you've got to do it in 3 coats, and it is a slow process and it's hard work, you have to get into a groove of it, otherwise you're not going to finish. And masonry, if you're going to make something beautiful, you have to focus and you have to get into your groove and into your stride, otherwise you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to get distracted, or you're just not going to finish, I think.
That's amazing.
And it's an amazing array of great skills that you've acquired through going through that different process. So in terms of a diverse range of abilities, it's given you, I think, great opportunities acquiring a broad range of skills and understanding how they link together as well.
I think so. Often when you work for really big firms and your job is the same job, perhaps maybe it's restoring, or or maybe it's going around measuring up and deciding what's going to have to be changed, and then people come and do it. If you're front facing with a client, if you're the one with the van who has to go and pick up materials, if you're the one who has to decide the materials, if you're the ones who have to think on your feet because the weather's changed, or it's too cold to use lime today, and you have to make your own schedule for the week, you're learning so much rather than just being told what to do all the time on the one thing. I think you've probably gained years of experience more than somebody of your counterpart working for a bigger firm in that sense. They might have the repetitive hand tools, churn it out, get it out, which is what everybody needs when they're working stone. Repetition is the key to success in many ways. But what you've had, very difficult to get hold of, and that's the kind of the full project. And Charlotte and I talk about this quite a lot, don't we? The shock of people when they leave college, for instance, managing a project from start to finish. And some of it can be front facing, some of it can just be bookkeeping, some of it can be pushing through and getting something to a deadline.
And logistics.
Logistics, moving a van load of lime plaster to a site that's inaccessible, and working out how am I going to do that without killing me or anybody else. So
or denting the work van.
well, that So
yes, no,
it was great.
I spent about just under 5 years with that company, and it was hard work. And every time anybody would ask me, "Oh, what are you doing now, Jess?" because I changed quite a lot of what I'm doing a lot of the time, I would always say how much I loved my job and how I just wanted that. I just loved it. Part of working with clients, part of what I really enjoyed about that was we were working on their home, and they obviously loved their home, otherwise they weren't going to be spending lots of money for us to be there, because it's a heritage property. So unfortunately the prices are higher for materials, but you could have such an honest conversation with them about the way that their buildings had developed and evolved over time, because they so often were interested in the history of their property as well. And that was the bit that I really loved as well, and extolling the virtues of lime and taking cement off and removing rubbish pointing from their property, and then walking away and leaving them with something that they could be proud of, but that I could be proud of as well. It was having that relationship with the client. And even now I was still in touch with clients even after their projects had finished, because I got a text from one of them saying, "You and my colleague are going to be the only ones who will find this funny, but we've just booked ourselves onto a lime plastering course and we're so excited." And she texted me out of the blue because we were the only ones that would have understood. I was thrilled that they had such a good experience with us and other contractors on site. They did a really big project renovating their building into something that they wanted, but they wanted to be able to maintain it going forward, and being able to be part of that for somebody else, part of their education, learning about their property and the materials that make it breathe and work properly, that they would then go on to do more education to then look after it themselves, or even if it wasn't to do it themselves, but to know what contractors coming in, what they wanted from them, which is equally as important, because everyone can be taken for a ride if you don't know what you're talking about, unfortunately.
You've indoctrinated them into the cult of lime.
I know.
You are a charismatic preacher of lime. Well, good for you. We need more of you. Less cement people, more you.
And so what are your plans moving forward?
Yeah, what are the plans, Jess?
I'm putting this
World
out into the
domination.
ether.
Come
It
on,
is
world
absolutely
domination.
it is. I've been saying this to loads of people, but I haven't actually got my application in yet. I would really like to study at City and Guilds. I know a few people who have I've known a few people who've gone through there, and the skill that they come out with is incredible. And I don't feel confident enough yet to go out on my own, and I feel like I need just a little bit more not maybe molding is the wrong word, but a little bit more something. And I'm hoping that somewhere like City and Guilds would be able to do that for me. Otherwise I'm not quite sure what the plan is. I would like to be making things for people, perhaps in a more artistic or a more less cutting avenue than masonry. I am in a period of thinking what my stone carving is going to look like going forward. I've got tools. I don't have a space at the moment. But I really want to be around people who are doing it as well. There's
Can I ask whereabouts in the country you're living?
Milton Keynes.
So if there's anybody out near Milton Keynes who's got a free space, Jess can have
Free being the operative word.
Yeah, absolutely free corner of a workshop that
I will make tea. Good at making tea.
That's all you need. That's all you need. All you need is a space, don't you? I think your plan is absolutely perfect. You have a grounding in stone. You understand the material. You understand its limitations and its possibilities, and you've got ambition. And then the next step is to get what's in your head into the real world. Most people just need those kinds of looking and designing skills, because you've got all the making skills. All you need to do is put the looking and the drawing skills together. And Charlotte would say it's a wonder, and bish bosh, Bob's your uncle, isn't it, Charlotte? Really?
Just like that.
Just like that. And a bit of practice. But yeah, I would say that's what that bit of regardless of where you do it, that little extra bit of training kind of frees you up, doesn't it, Charlotte? That kind of that looking, that not anatomical, I'm not going to use that word, but analytical looking is on top of all your other skills.
I think analytical looking, and again, going back to the design, is understanding the creative process with your chosen material and how to get your I don't know if this is something you're comfortable with or not, but understanding how design plays such a key role in what you make, and being aware of location, how everything fits together, even if you're only making a small thing. I'm lettering, not carving, but even for a house name, I would never design a house name for somebody without having a really good idea of where it's going to go, what their location is, how do you see it from a distance as well as close up, all of those skills that aren't about the hard making but are so integral to the overall final project. And then when you have that idea in your head, like you say, moving it forward and finishing it.
And diversification, everything that you've done before gives you the perfect background to be able to diversify while you pursue other things as well, because everybody has to make a living. And you've got timber framing, you've got timber work, you've got restoration skills, you've got lime building, you've got all those skills that you can employ into your future careers. But you can also fall back and lean into those things to make you some money while you see your ambition.
Yeah, but you've already got a lot of years of experience anyway. So, in the meantime, when you're ready, I would just say, get the jobs, let the panic settle.
Does it ever? Just
yeah,
asking.
You get to the point where you don't care, actually. You're like,
no, I think there's always
if it fails, it fails.
I think there's always a little bit of panic, but I think that's good because it keeps you on your toes and makes you a bit more aware, of your pitfalls to avoid them.
I always say G.I. Jane.
What's that?
Failure is not an option.
Oh, I don't. It's not that film. I don't know.
Well, you see, it can't. There is no other choice than doing it. There's no choice. You just every day you just get in the workshop. You're like,
when you talk to craftspeople, we all want to do our best. So many people feel they're not ready or they're not good enough because they want to be really good at what they do. And I always think there's loads of people out there who really don't care about that ethic. And, they're not brilliant by a very long shot. They might think they are, but they're loads of people that are not brilliant earning really good livings. It's not about how good you are, it's about how confident you are.
Yes,
quite
I think
often.
that's partly what is the bit that I need to work on, because I do find myself looking at lots of people in the world. Social media is great
It's
for that,
terrible.
isn't it? It's no, that's what I mean. It's so good to compare yourself. It's so easy to compare yourself to other people, and I find myself doing that with people, and then I go, I can absolutely do that, and I know that I can do that. The problem is my confidence
Well, I think
is not at their level where they can put themselves out there and show what they can do. I'm happy to show what I can do, but I can't push myself as much as I would like to and as I would need to make it my living.
I always say a lot to young people starting off I talk a lot about the confidence you need to project to your clients. And I always say what clients need is they need to put their faith and trust in you so that they have a great feeling that they're going to get what they want. And I always give an example that imagine if I was gone and done a degree in fashion, and a couple came up to me and somebody said, oh, I want you to design my wedding dress, and I felt nervous about it, and I said, oh, I don't know, I've only just left college, I don't know if that'll be any good, but I'll give it a go. They might think, oh, I don't know. But if you said, however you feel inside, if you said to them, oh my God, I'm going to make you look amazing, you're going to look brilliant, I'm so excited, I'm going to do my best for you, that is what you want to hear. If you went to commission a wedding dress or some clothes for a special occasion, you want the person making them to say it's going to be amazing. And you have to project that, because you would probably do a really good job, but it's about projecting that confidence so that the client feels they're getting the
safe
best. And safe takes a really long time to feel it, but you can project it at any stage, but to feel it takes a long time, I think.
It's what they say, fake it till you make it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
We'll have to talk to you in 12 months time and go, right,
let's make it 6 years and we'll see where I am then.
No, I think a year's time. I just want to ask Jess, so you've got ambitions to do some of your own stuff and to work out your own, how you're going to express things that you want to say in the material that you've grown to love, which is amazing, and make things that you love for no real reason and just see how it goes. We wish you the absolute best of luck, because that's exactly where Charlotte and I started. And I mean, I wouldn't say look at us, because I wouldn't necessarily follow our trajectory.
This really helped.
So lovely that we get to meet you. This is what the podcast is all about. This is what Charlotte and I love, is meeting new people who are, wherever you are on the journey of making stone your career, that you've discovered this extraordinary material. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and sharing that with us, really.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be here. And it's been a real honour to meet you both as well, even through the medium of Zoom.
Charlotte, are you anything else?
Thank you ever so much. I loved hearing you talk about your range of skills and that sort of diversity of skills with wood and stone and light. I love it. Fantastic. I'm always really envious when I hear people talk about things like that. It makes me want to go back and learn everything.
You can. You always can.
It's always time for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it's brilliant, and it will stand you in good stead as well. I love seeing a young woman learning these skills and not being intimidated.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks ever so much, and really lovely to talk.
Good luck for the future. We're going to watch your career with great enthusiasm. No pressure.
No pressure.
We are welcoming Paul Synan on our show today, who is a mason at Gloucester Cathedral, and he's here to talk about an award that he's recently won and give us a little bit of background on his career, how he's got to where he is and what his daily working life is like. So welcome, Paul.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you, Paul.
So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about is your award. So we'd like to big you up and give you a big clapping of hands. And if you just want to give us tell us a bit about what it is, please?
It's the Worshipful Company of Masons Journeyman Award, which I'm not sure how it came. I guess my boss, Pascal, got an email from the Worshipful Company to ask if he could put anyone forward. And I guess that's how it happened. I'm at the right point in my career that he thought he could put me forward for that. And that was it, really. Just, I think I submitted a small kind of description of what I've been doing, what my responsibilities are and have been, maybe a small portfolio, something like that. Here I am. Well, there I was.
What's the award called again? Has it got a title?
It's the Journeyman Award.
The Journeyman Award from the Worshipful Company of Masons.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks. I don't really feel like I did much apart from just kind of send a more embellished than usual CV, I guess.
Well, I think one of the things that we're going to say on this podcast is we're not going to let people put themselves down. So many people we've spoken to are so full of modesty and underestimate themselves. So I'm going to say that, Pascal probably received an email that said something like, have you got anybody who's outstanding that you'd like to put forward for this award? And Pascal says, do you know what? There's this guy called Paul. He's absolutely brilliant. He doesn't big himself up enough. And, I'd like to put him forward. So, you didn't put a small few things in. You put the best of your work together in a portfolio and you submitted the best piece of work that you could. And you were rightly awarded something.
Well, it's kind of you to say.
So you did you do your apprenticeship at Gloucester?
I did training at Gloucester. I came to it all quite late. I did a year at the Building Crafts College. Then I went on to the Prince's Foundation, which is 10 months. They called it a Building Crafts apprenticeship, but it was only 10 months. So is
that when you travel? Did you travel around the country going to different people's workshops?
Yeah, that was really, really good actually, because there was a fortnight of trying different craft skills in Scotland and a live build or like a design week and a live build, which we did I was up in Scotland for about 3 months maybe. And then the rest of the time was going off to work at different companies on work experience. And that was really good. That's stood me in good stead to get a bit of experience and figure out what I liked. Just had a little our first child. She'd just been born, so yeah, actually thinking back on it, it was quite a funny time to to sort of change careers and do that. But yeah, I did some work experience with Clifton Conservation. I ended up there for nearly a year, and then I also did some work experience at Gloucester a year later. Training position came up there, which I took, and I've been there ever since. 9.5 years ago. 9.
So you joined their team as a sort of an improver mason, from having your experience, and then were you trained in a yard, or were you thrust straight onto the scaffold? How did it work?
Well, the good thing about Gloucester is it's always been a small team, so straight away I was doing banker work and work on site. Anything that comes up, we usually end up doing. So you kind of get thrown into it. And I think I did a banker MVQ and MVQ level 3 in banker masonry while I was there. And then just as that finished, a place on the Cathedrals Workshop Fellowship came up. So I did the 2-year foundation degree with them. So it was kind of 3 years of training at Gloucester and then more time just as a mason, improving, being a senior mason. Not for that long, actually. I was just made senior mason at the beginning of the year.
That's amazing. That's 2024 is turning out all right then.
Yeah.
There's quite something in Providence to be able to say that your name goes on a list as the senior mason at Gloucester Cathedral. That's a long list of prestigious people on that list.
Yeah,
that's quite nice for you to join it, isn't it?
It's nice I've been trained by some really good people at Gloucester, and I feel like most of the people that I was trained by, they're not there anymore, but I feel like their standards have become my standards. Like, you learn so much from other people and you kind of keep it with you, so that's a privilege.
I think keeping the skills that we have learned alive, to me, always feels like a necessity. I never feel that they're my skills. I feel an obligation to pass them on and keep as much of the skills alive as I can. That sounds like a bit like what you might think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's what a lot of what we do now at Cathedral is what happened with me, and now what I'm doing is passing on what I've learned from other people to new apprentices. which is really good. So we've got 3 apprentices, 2 senior masons and the master mason, Pascal. So they kind of get one-on-one attention. That's actually, I was saying to my wife today, the more that I do this and get asked questions by people and sometimes don't know the answer, the more I'm learning myself as I go along, which is good because I often feel a bit like an imposter. Kind of.
I think we all know that feeling.
Familiar with that feeling.
I was listening to something online the other day that was talking about teaching, and it was saying one of the best ways to learn is to teach, because it makes you question how you view things and what you think you understand, and people always challenge your own perception of what you think, don't they? That when you start teaching, it helps you formulate what you think you know.
Yeah, it really does. Today I had to think about why I do something beyond just, well, this is how I was taught to do it.
One of the things we've discovered talking to other people who've had cathedral masonry training is a few of them were given time to draw as part of their training, to go off and draw for a day or half a day regularly. Is that something that happens in Gloucester Cathedral, or
I would say it probably could if we made time to do it. And I think as part of the CWF course, there's a carving module, and as part of that module, we were encouraged to kind of go off and draw and look at things and look at how shadow and light work with each other. Yeah, that's probably something we don't do enough of. Was it Peter Randall Page you were talking with about? Yeah, that struck a chord with me.
Alan
Mickleway.
Alan definitely said that drawing was the core of everything, and I think we agree that, don't we?
Yeah, because he went off and he was given time to draw as well,
and he did evening classes as well, I think. Obviously he did arts degree, whatever. Let's just make sure that people understand what the CWF is. So it's the Cathedral Works Fellowship, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
And that's basically all of the major cathedrals have pushed for and gained recognition as a training institutions, aren't they? So did you, as a member of that course, you went to other cathedrals to look at how they worked? Is that how it works?
Yeah, when I did it, we went to different cathedrals and had different modules taught at different cathedrals,
right,
from different kind of specialists at those different cathedrals. So it was a good way of seeing how different workshops work as well. This year, the CWF has started offering a level 3 course, and that is much more workshop based. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a cohort of students from different cathedrals come to Gloucester, and my colleague James is leading the banker masonry part of it. That's what they did. They just figured out how to set out the stones they'd be working, did as much as they could over the week, and then took their stones back to the cathedral, some of them on the train, which I don't envy. And then they'll go off and they'll do different things at other cathedrals. They'll do some conservation, they'll learn to carve, learn about the history and archaeology of cathedrals as well. It kind of encompasses everything. I think one of the main things as well is the work-based project. It's a really good thing about the CWF because it kind of draws everything together. Conservation, setting out, project management. It's as if they packaged something up and could just pass it on to somebody else, and they would be able to do the work without the student necessarily doing it themselves, but usually they end up doing it. So by the end of it, I think people end up with a lot more confidence in themselves because it's a really, really steep learning curve. It was for me.
I think project management is a brilliant thing to be taught because it's a huge, talk about this regularly, but it's a huge part of any job is, making it happen. All the different things that have to come into place to make a job happen. It's a wide variety of things that have to line up, from logistics to pricing and timing and managing people's expectations and knowing what's achievable and not achievable.
Probably more so if you're self-employed, but people, stonemasons at cathedrals can imagine that they're just going to work stone, or people come into stonemasonry maybe in the heritage world imagining that they'll just work stone. There's so much more to it than that. For instance, like setting out, actually, that aspect of it, I think is really, really good for people to be able to learn to do that and understand it, because so much of that is expected out in the commercial world. And my brief experience of working in the commercial world is that not everybody has it to a very strong degree, maybe, because there's that aspect of training that we've lost a little bit, it seems like.
Do you think that's because we rely so heavily on technology now? Or, I mean, my experience at the cathedral is the confidence that the masons can survey, detail tape, understand the building and what can be removed, where it can and can't be removed all at once, and then projecting 3-dimensional images of blocks into 3D space and being able to draw those blocks in 3D on a piece of paper on the scaffolding, take all of those details down to the setting out shop and set out complex molds. I mean, I know people train for a long time to be able to do that, but my experience on the cathedrals I've been on are that most masons who are on the scaffolding have an element of skill around that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in other industries might rely on somebody sitting in front of a computer doing CAD to do that. They wouldn't necessarily be able to do that longhand. Are you using technology to do your setting out now at the cathedral, or is it still longhand at a drawing table?
It's longhand, yeah. Some cathedrals are. Some cathedrals have started to do that. Pascal's quite traditional, and I think rightly so, because I guess to be able to understand. We were talking about it recently because 2 of the apprentices are working on setting up projects at the moment, and to get the kind of detective work, the kind of getting into the medieval mindset, you need to be able to do that by a bit of kind of trial and error and seeing how things work. I guess maybe you could do with that with CAD, but there's something about doing it by hand that gives you, a better understanding of a building.
I love the idea of the medieval mindset.
I guess not all the medieval mindset is good, but at least to be able to kind of...
some of it is quite terrifying.
Yeah, but at least the setting out mindset.
What does the journeyman certificate mean, in a sense? It means, because these things are all very well, aren't they? And sometimes they mean something and they change a career pattern. It allows you to move up or earn more money. What does the journeyman certificate do for you, Paul, personally?
Well, that's quite a difficult question, because I should have given this a bit of thought.
Just gets hung up in the hall.
Basically, well, I guess it's nice to kind of have recognition, I guess, for something, especially personally, because I didn't start masonry until I was already in my 30s. Feels nice to feel like I'm kind of going somewhere, and it hasn't been for nothing, because it felt like a kind of a stab in the dark when I did it. But actually, there was, I don't know if you remember, we all had to agree to something. I can't remember what it was. It was to kind of uphold.
Yes, it was.
You put your hand up with the mayor
and an oath. We had to swear an oath.
Yeah, that's it.
What oath is this?
Yeah.
Basically, Paul and I were at an award ceremony, and for different reasons, but we both, all of us, had to stand up and say, we swear that we will uphold the high standards that have been handed down to us, and that we had to swear that we would pass our knowledge on, if I remember.
Yeah,
right?
that was it. That was the thing that stuck with me, passing the knowledge on. And I guess that's what it means to me. I take that quite seriously, I think
everybody in that room felt the importance of that bit of the sentence, I think.
What did you do before you were carving? Anything with transferable skills?
I really, really enjoyed making things with plasticine when I was a child. I could take you back to that, but not really. My dad's a carpenter. I kind of worked with him a very, very tiny amount when I was a teenager. But no, I failed all of my GCSEs apart from English, because that was the only one, English language, that's the only one you didn't need to do coursework for. So I could kind of like mitch off school the entire time and still turn up for that and pass. But so it took me about 10 years to figure out a way to get back on track. So I did an ancient history degree, got office work, and I was like, why am I doing this? Yeah, but the degree had modules, archaeological modules, and some of them were taught at the British Museum. And I just loved it there. And I love Greek and Roman sculpture, and I think that reawakened something I'd thought about as a child, I guess. Maybe that's a bit transferable in a way to kind of enjoying history.
Yeah, very much so, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think plasticine is a brilliant material, a hugely underestimated material, and especially for children. And I grew up using plasticine regularly. You did as well, Nina?
Oh God, yeah, it was the first thing I made a mess with, plasticine. Yeah. It's very useful now, actually. I was sworn over, like convinced by it not that long ago by watching Joe Grogan, actually, who hopefully we'll have on in a following episode, where she was having problems using things like clay over a small armature. because the shrinkage was hard to control over a warm summer.
Mhm.
And she swapped over to using plasticine over a wire armature for small, very, very tiny kind of rococo detail. And although some waxes like Chevan or what have you are soft enough to use, you constantly have to kind of put a hairdryer on them to kind of warm them up to give them a good surface. But the plasticine, if you get good quality stuff, kind of warms gently in your hand and it's very gesturable, if that's the right word. You can make instinctive gestures in it.
I love plasticine.
I hadn't used it in years and years and years.
I always have loads of it in the workshop.
I did all the initial maquettes.
Yeah.
I know, brilliant. And I did all the initial maquettes of the small angels that I'm doing in red plasticine.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Well, so they're paying for some.
Well, I think that just leaves us to say congratulations to you with your certificate that's hanging on the back of the toilet door, and on your continued journey.
Thank you.
To your mastership, I hope.
Oh, don't know about that.
Well, yeah, I imagine.
Self-depreciation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And congratulations to you on your mastership.
Yeah, surprising. It was great. It was a really nice afternoon, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I never really got to the sandwiches. People were very cutthroat with those sandwiches. Yeah.
I had to make a beeline for those sandwiches because
you were good actually. You shot in there. I saw you with a plateful. I should have got you to get me some actually. And I have to say, it was at Mansion House, which is extraordinarily ornate and very beautiful. But they served crisps in a bowl with tongs. And so I think we all deserved a master certificate. And we should have been judged on how many full crisps were on our plates, because you had to have a very gentle understanding of compression. You just ended up with a bowl of crumbs. I was like in there for like 5 minutes thinking, I am going to get crisps. I am going to all like. I went into gung ho. I hadn't had enough to eat. I was a bit hangry, and it was an extraordinary test of craftsmanship, I felt. All right, Paul. I don't know. Is there anything else, Charlotte, you wanted to cover?
No, other than to say thank you. And
it's
maybe
late
if we're in Gloucester, we'll call in and ask for a guided tour.
Yeah.
Say hello.
I really would like to do that.
Yeah,
really would like to do that.
I've never been to Gloucester. I've been to very few cathedrals, actually.
I think we should make a pact to get you to that one, because that's one of the beauts.
Is it?
It's one of the lovely ones. Yeah.
One of the jewels.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do a trip.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. And
so, Paul, we'd just like to say thank you ever so much for coming on, and it's been really good to talk to you. Really interesting to hear your knowledge of material, of place, of history, and teaching all combined. It's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. You're welcome. Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, they were fab, weren't they? Those really interesting, different. Cut that bit out. Not difficult at all. Different people. Jessica's varied background into her career, from fine art through to timber framing, etc., and finding stone and finding the joy, which we were talking about earlier, in masonry, like coming home. And Paul's kind of induction into the cathedral system and his continued progression through that as a career path, I thought were really interesting. I hope everybody found them as interesting as we did.
Yeah, I thought they were both at different stages of careers, two quite different people with different approaches to stone in some ways, but both, you could tell, have got a love and passion for the material, the processes, and an ingrained belief in doing things the right way, learning techniques that will stand them in good stead, and already passing those skills on as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, good to listen and talk to both of them.
So Charlotte, you have had the pleasure of a few days off, and you travelled. A great joy to travel to Ireland, and you've experienced some amazing things in Ireland that you wanted to talk about.
I did. Well, I lived in Ireland for a number of years, a long time ago, and I always knew about the Newgrange tomb, but I never visited.
Where is it, Charlotte?
It's sort of north of Dublin, near Drogheda in County Meath. And so I was on a road trip anyway for various personal reasons, and we were driving from Cork up to the north of Ireland. And I just thought, well, we have to go to Newgrange. I just couldn't, not go. And it's it's not just Newgrange, actually. The whole of the area, they call it within the curve of the River Bóinne, and there's this mass of megalithic and near archaeological sites. So there's Newgrange, there's Knowth, and then there's another tomb I can't remember the name of. So it's this incredibly rich archaeology, art, mysticism in a way that's all based within a single area, known by the sort of term Newgrange. And you have to book your tickets quite early. There's limited availability, and that you really need to book it through the Newgrange website. We'll post all of these links in case anybody's interested. Basically, it's a big mound of earth. There's lots of them, but there's two very large mounds of earth, one at Newgrange and one at Knowth, with passage tombs inside them. And within the passage tombs and around the mounds of earth are the most amazing stone carvings, basically lots of big boulders with beautiful carvings on them. And you get to go into the passage tomb at Newgrange. Knowth isn't accessible as a visitor, but you get to see the outside of Knowth, where it's got the majority of the carved stones. And these are older than the pyramids in Egypt, and they're utterly breathtakingly beautiful. The carvings are mostly line carvings with spiral, waveform, diamond patterns on them, and all carved with pieces of stone. So not carving in the sense that we understand carving nowadays. It's before the advent of steel or iron. And so the tools are really primitive, but the forms and the quality of the line, there's nothing primitive about it. It's incredibly beautiful and incredibly moving. I found it anyway, to see, Knowth has got something like 48% of Ireland's carved Neolithic history in it. And I just found it utterly astonishing. And
that's an incredible number, 48%.
I know. And what was if you go to the visitor centre, we spent the whole day there. We were there from all day, from about 10 till sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock. And we had a 11:30 ticket, and we got to the sort of site for just after 10. And then they've got a brilliant interpretation centre at the visitor centre. And we had a cup of coffee in a nice cafe, and then we went round the interpretation centre, and we were easily over an hour. And then you walk across a little bridge, and a bus picks you up, and the first bus took us to Knowth, and then you all get off and you have a look at the site at Knowth. And so you can see on the outside of the tomb, it's like a big circular mound of earth, and the bottom of the mound is encircled with these big boulders that are carved. And it was a really grey, overcast day when I was there, so very little light and shadow, and quite difficult to make out the patterns on many of the stones because the light was so flat that day. But having spent time in the visitor centre, I had a much clearer idea of what I was actually looking at. It really helped to see through, the dark grey day to what was there, and visualise what it could look like in the strong sunshine as well. And lots of other little circular mounds around that tomb, and you can go up on them. You can have a look, and the guide was utterly brilliant that day as well. And then you get on a bus from Knowth to the Newgrange tomb, which is absolutely massive. And it's faced with a beautiful white quartz, like little tiny bits of quartz interspersed with beautiful smooth river stones. And, the two sites are treated quite differently due to differing opinions on how this quartz was used within the archaeology. So, it gives you an understanding that everything is an interpretation as well, which is interesting. And then you get to go in the tomb at Newgrange, and there's a little simulated light display, because the Newgrange tomb is also aligned on the winter solar solstice, so that I can't remember the exact times, but something like 9 o'clock on the 21st of December, a shaft of light starts to come through and it hits the tomb and illuminates the whole tomb. And
Wow.
it must have been an astonishing experience 5,000 years ago, to see the accuracy of it and just the beauty of it. Great. There was a big carved bowl inside, so nobody really knows what went on, but it was clearly a very special and mystical place all those years ago. So what struck me was that I hadn't understood quite how amazing Newgrange and the other sites were until I visited. And they're just phenomenal, huge archaeological ruins that you can visit. And when you compare them to the pyramids or other places, they're relatively easy access. They're slightly north of Dublin, and there's lots of you could easily do it without a car if you wanted to. I was just really, really taken by it, and I bought a fabulous book called The Megalithic Art of the Passage Tombs at Knowth, County Meath. It's a massive, great, heavy book, volume 7, and it's got photographs, beautiful photographs of all of the carvings, really clear details, beautiful archaeological drawings of everything to do with the passage tomb and the carvings. But I've also discovered that these books are available as digital downloads for free on a website, and I'm going to post the links to that website for people who may or may not be interested. I mean, phenomenal free resource for people who might like to go and have a look. And I was blown away when I discovered, I still like a book, but I was blown away when I discovered you could get the digital downloads as well. I thought that was absolutely phenomenal.
Brilliant.
My top tip is, if you're in Ireland and you've got time, is go to Newgrange, but you absolutely need to plan your visit. Tickets open 60 days prior to your visit, and they sell out really, really quickly. So
Right.
I think I booked my ticket on the 59th day and there were very few tickets left.
Right,
So,
okay.
really, really does need to be planned.
So they're monitoring the impact of tourism on the site,
Absolutely.
obviously.
The breath, the moisture of people's.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
I don't know
they've
if they've got that,
calculated.
I'm sure it's all to do with that.
Yeah. Extraordinary.
Yeah, people
And
come.
when was it, and you may or may not know this, knowing you probably do, when was it discovered? I mean, was it
was
always there? Was
no,
it?
it had, well, obviously it's always been there, but people
No.
forgot about it. And Newgrange I think it was Newgrange or Knowth, was unearthed initially in the 1600s. And what had happened is the mounds had been completely covered by soil, and then people were digging, but they didn't discover the passages until much later. And then they only discovered, it wasn't that long ago, it might have been the 60s or 70s, the solstice, because obviously nobody had been there that early in the morning. And so it was very recently they discovered that it was aligned on the winter solstice. And that sort of completely changes the understanding of what it might, the importance of it and the accuracy of the build and all of those things. It does change the understanding of it. But then I was also going to change topic a little bit and tell you a funny story about a trip I also did en route to the Rock of Cashel, which is
Where's that?
castle.
Whereabouts is that?
Oh, I don't know. It's somewhere en route.
Rock of Cashel.
In Cashel, in Ireland.
Yeah.
An easy trip, just off we didn't have to do much of a detour. And again, quite interesting. Nothing for me on the level of Newgrange. Newgrange blew me away.
And is it a rock? What is it?
It is a big hill, and on top of the hill is a sort of castle and chapel. And it's been, built and fortified for, again, a really long time, 1,000+ years. The ruins go back and they go back, and you do a guided tour. And it was had a lot of very grey days in Ireland. But what was funny about it, and it was interesting, and if you're passing, I'd recommend going in. But there's a little chapel as part of the site, and you can only go in as a guided tour. And we had a guide, and he was saying that all of the other buildings are built of limestone, but the chapel was built of sandstone. And I said, why is it built of sandstone? Was the stone local? The stone was relatively local, but then he said, and this made me laugh, he said, well, The reason it's built of sandstone is because it's got very intricate carvings inside, and you can't do very intricate carvings in limestone. And so I said, I said, well, I said,
you'll find.
as a stone carver, I said I'd have to disagree. I said usually limestone is easier to get an intricate detail in, and some limestones are very hard, and some sandstones are very hard, and some are very soft, and both, you know, it depends on the stone you're using. So you really can't make a broad statement like that.
Oh, well done.
And so I didn't like to go any further within a group of people. He clearly wasn't expecting anybody with that.
Especially you.
So anyway, in we went into a little, really lovely, beautiful little chapel carved of sandstone. And I was, you know, really interested to see the intricate carvings. And I was surprised because to my eye, I mean, they were beautiful, but they weren't intricate in the way I had understood he was explaining.
Mm.
And what was really fascinating to me was, after your recommendations last summer, I was in Vézelay, and the sort of construction period was very similar, sort of, you know, 1250 to 1350 for both of them. And the difference, the contrast in the styles of carving were so different. The intricacy of Vézelay, the sophistication of the carvings at Vézelay was far beyond anything in this little chapel. And it really struck me that having that reference in my head, to be able to cross-reference it and look at how the differences in materials, probably availability of materials, of tools, of influence, technology was really important in my understanding as a maker of, you know, how influences happen and how you use them, and then how you can bring them into different topics that you're working on. And I always think, you know, whenever I go on holiday, we always do something nice. We always go and look at something stony and architectural, and I always say, oh, well, it's work, you know, and I always feel a bit like I'm lying, you know, because really I'm just having a nice time. Actually, it was a reminder that it is work. It is giving me that a much broader spectrum of the history of my craft, because I'm not very good at reading books. I'm only good at looking at pictures most of the time. And so it really helps give you an understanding of very ancient history of our craft. It's amazing to think of that lineage that we come down from, and how the sort of the cultural, the location, the geography, all of those things influence what we're making at a particular time, and to impact how, you know, how that impacts our making and view of what we're doing. It just find it really interesting to think like that.
So the sandstone carved elements that he pointed out in the chapel, his idea of intricate carving, and then your remembrance of Vézelay, they were obviously, if you don't know and you haven't seen it, you must look at Vézelay. That to me is just extra. That's like space age, isn't it? And so what he was talking about was far more simplistic in a sense. Like it was
much more simplistic,
right?
And there was,
but for that area, it would have been highly decorative.
For that area, and there was some lovely Celtic carvings, but
it's amazing, isn't
it? On the scale of Vézelay,
in
terms of the amount per square meter, I would say, but also within the
layers and layers and layers of imagery and
technical intricacy. And it is because the stones are so different, you know, there's no way.
And it's really easy to think that, so Vézelay is layers and layers of pictorial, zoomorphic and kind of humanoid characters playing out biblical stories, or stories of martyrs, well, saints being killed, basically, and in a kind of cartoon pictorial form. And then I think when you look at intricate detail, perhaps done with only foliage and pattern, it's really easy to see one above the other in achievement about how we measure quality, in a sense. And actually pattern and foliage in that kind of context is extraordinary, isn't it? And it's really interesting to kind of combine the two. So thanks for listening. We appreciate everybody's support as usual. Like and subscribe. Please share. If you like us or subscribe to us, more people can find us. So that's really important. You're doing us a favour by doing that. So thank you for doing that, everybody.
And happy chipping.
Happy chipping, everybody. See you next time. Bugger.